the great world rhythm were heartbeats of one soul. To feel was a flame discovery of God. All mind was a single harp of many strings, all life a song of many meeting lines. For words were many, but the self was one. This knowledge was now made a cosmos seed. This seed was cased in the safety of the light. It needed not a shield of ignorance.
Good morning. So we're reading in Book 3, the Book of the Divine Mother, and we're in Canto 3, the House of the Spirit and the New Creation. We've come to page 322 at the break. So in Book 2, Aswapati traveled through all the inner planes of consciousness, starting from the lower end in the worlds of subtle matter, and worked his way up to the heights of the spiritual consciousness. And there he encountered the Divine Mother. So he was searching for the key to nature's change, and he encountered that, he felt that in her when he encountered her. So in the beginning of Book 3, The Pursuit of the Unknowable, Aswapati left behind everything and entered into the transcendent consciousness. It says on the top of page 307, all he had been and all towards which he grew must now be left behind, or else transformed into a self of that which has no name. Alone and fronting an intangible force which offered nothing to the grasp of thought, his spirit faced the adventure of the inane. And then, in the next canto, Canto 2, on page 312 at the break, it says, even while he stood on being's naked edge, and all the passion and seeking of his soul faced their extinction in some featureless vast, the presence he yearned for suddenly drew close. Across the silence of the ultimate calm, out of a marvelous transcendence core of body, of wonder and lucency, as if a sweet mystic summary of herself escaping into the original bliss had come enlarged out of eternity. Someone came, infinite and absolute, a being of wisdom, power, and delight, even as a mother draws her child to her arms, took to her breast nature and world and soul. And then in this Canto 3, what we were reading, I think, last time, on page 318, a transformation comes over Aswapati. It says about 2/3 of the way down, a last and mightiest transformation came. His soul was all in front like a great sea, flooding the mind and body with its waves. His being spread to embrace the universe, united the within and the without, to make of life a cosmic harmony, an empire of the immanent divine. In this tremendous universality, not only his soul nature and mind sense included every soul and mind in his, but even the life of flesh and nerve was changed and grew one flesh and nerve with all that lives. He felt the joy of others as his joy. He bore the grief of others as his grief. His universal sympathy upbore, immense like ocean, the creation's load, as earth upbears all beings' sacrifice, thrilled with the hidden transcendence, joy, and peace. There was no more divisions, endless scroll. One grew the Spirit's secret unity. All nature felt again the single bliss. And then the next couple of pages describe further this experience of oneness And so we come to our present place on page 322 at the break. And Tinika, would you?
Then suddenly there came a downward look, as if a sea exploring its own depth. A living oneness widened at its core and joined him to unnumbered multitudes. A bliss, a light, a power, a flame-white love caught all into a so immense embrace. Existence found its truth on oneness' breast, and each became the self and space of all. The great world rhythms were heartbeat of the soul. To feel was a flame discovery of God. All mind was a single harp of many strings. All life a song of many meeting lives. For worlds were many, but the self was one. This knowledge now was made a cosmos seed. This seed was cased in the safety of the light. It needed not a sheath of ignorance. Then, from the trance of that tremendous clasp, and from the throbbings of that single heart, and from the naked spirit victory, a new and marvelous creation rose.
Thank you. Let's pause there. Oneness, no more separated. Even though there's a diversity of existence, of manifestation, of a world, of beings, individualities, but all the individualities are united in the one, are conscious of the one, each kind of one face of the one being, one personality. Yeah, in this supramental consciousness, all is united. So it doesn't leave out any parts of the being, the physical. That too is taken up into this oneness. So it's an absolute oneness and unity of consciousness, taking in the physical form as well as the inner consciousness. I wanted to read from Bhavan on this passage. It's kind of a key passage in the book because this is what Asopati has been striving for, this new creation. So it's just 2 or 3 pages. So commenting on this passage, Bhavan says, "Suddenly something happens. From the veil transcendent there comes not a word, but a downward look." The poet says that the effect of that downward look is like a sea exploring its own depths, something vast and limitless, discovering what is deep within itself. A living oneness widened at its core. The core is the very center, the heart of that living oneness. And Asopati feels it widening out and connecting him to unnumbered multitudes. There is no longer any sense of primal loneliness. There is a downward look, the feeling of something vast and deep opening up and discovering all that is within it. And suddenly he is connected with unnumbered multitudes, uncountable numbers of beings. And immense embrace suddenly takes hold of everything, an embrace which carries a bliss, a light, a power, a flame-white love. A pure, intense love which embraces everything and says, all of you, all of this is mine. You're all part of me. White is the color of absolute purity and also of intensity. If metal is heated in a furnace, it becomes red and then yellow, and finally it becomes white hot. That is the hottest, most intense state, when all impurities have been burned away. With this embrace, everything that exists, the whole of existence, found its truth on oneness breast, embraced by the oneness. Everything finds its truth and its essence and recognizes its oneness. Each part of the multiplicity became the self and space of all. This state is very difficult for us to imagine. In an aphorism, Sri Aurobindo speaks of it as the goal towards which all existence is evolving. And she quotes this aphorism. As if honey could taste itself and all its drops together, and all its drops could taste each other, and each the whole honeycomb as itself. So should the end be with God and the soul of man and the universe. And speaking of this aphorism, the mother says that honey is the symbol of Ananda, of bliss. That is the end, the fulfillment. And that is the state which Aswapati is experiencing now at the culmination of his great quest. This is one of the great climactic moments in the poem. For Aswapati now, the great world rhythms, the cosmic stir, the expansion and contraction of the universe are all experienced as the throbbing heartbeats of one soul. To feel was a flame discovery of God. Everything experienced by the senses was an intense perception of the divine. All mind was a single harp of many strings. A harp is a musical instrument with many strings. In the Christian tradition, it said that in heaven the angels play harps, making heavenly music. Here Aswapati experiences all the movements of mind in the universe as many strings of a single harp. He feels all life as a song of many meeting lives. Like a great choir, all lives in the universe are taking part in one great song of life. There is one harp with many strings, the harp of mind. All the lives in the universe are singing one song. All the rhythms and vibrations of all the worlds are heartbeats of one soul. For worlds were many, but the self was one. He feels the blissful embrace of oneness uniting all the many worlds with all their beings and experiences into one soul, one self. This experience gives Aswapati a new knowledge. He now knows about oneness and multiplicity and the relationship between them because he has experienced it. And now he sees this knowledge being expressed as the seed of a new universe, a new cosmos, a new creation. The seed was cased in the safety of the light, encased in the protection of full consciousness. Does not need any covering of ignorance. Our cosmos, the material universe that we know, seems to have taken birth from a seed of inconscience and to be covered up by a sheath of ignorance. But that is not the case with this new seed which Aswapati is seeing now. And out of the trance of that tremendous clasp, that powerful embrace of bliss and power and light and flame-white love, and from the throbbings of that single heart of one soul, and from the naked spirit's victory, the triumph of pure, unveiled spirit, a new and marvelous creation rose. Aswapati is privileged to witness the birth of a new creation. Sri Aurobindo, in describing what was to come with the manifestation of the supramental consciousness on earth, that not only would a new species arise embodying this supramental consciousness, but that descent of the supermind would also affect, transform, in a sense, enlighten mind. Mind would no longer be this divided, kind of struggling consciousness that we now experience, trying to piece together images of the reality, all kind of broken reflections, all partial, all mistaken. It itself could be enlightened, and humanity also could participate in a divine life through this enlightened mentality, this higher consciousness, and that there would be grades of a higher mind between the human mind and the supermind, different grades of the spiritual consciousness, which also would become embodied here on earth in stages of beings, and through which humanity could evolve and move towards the supramental consciousness. And that the descent would not only affect mind, but even affect the life principle. And that also could take on a kind of new harmony and expression of the divine here in the world. And even physical matter could undergo some change and influence of this. All of this would unfold over time. Doesn't specify exactly, but gradually this would more and more take hold and transform the whole life here. Though the mother says that for a new race, that probably several hundred years would be required. But she says even now, among the elite of humanity, among those who are aspiring for this supramental consciousness, that even now they could have this transformation. And what is, I think, especially important is with the descent of the supramental consciousness, that is now working and available as a kind of grace and divine force that's seeking its instruments to manifest. Wherever there is an opening to that consciousness and force, it automatically enters that place and is gradually transforming bit by bit all of this world. Whatever is open is undergoing this change. So Aswapati experiences this in these higher reaches of the consciousness. And yet this is what will unfold over time here in our world. even they will be affected by this. Even their resistances will be overcome. But again, this takes time. But then you can imagine with, let's say, in a few hundred years, if there is this new race of supramentalized beings that are here on Earth, living amongst the other human beings, what a great power and influence that will have in our world. That we will see those beings, experience those beings amongst us. Hmm. Yeah, that also may be happening. Mother speaks of this, that some of the children being born are of a special kind now. So let's continue. We can read it. Sorry? Meditating.
Incalculable outflowing infinitudes, laughing out an unmeasured happiness, lived their innumerable unity. Worlds where the being is unbound and wide, bodied unthinkably the egoless self. Rapture of beatific energies, join time to the timeless, poles of a single joy. White vast were seen where all is wrapped in all. There were no contraries, no sundered parts. All by spiritual links were joined to all, and bound indissolubly to the One. Each was unique but took all the lives of his own, and following out the stones of the infinite, recognized in himself the universe, a splendid center of infinity's whirl. Pushed to its zenith's height, its last expanse, felt the divinity of its own self bliss, repeated in its numberless other selves. It took up tirelessly into its scope persons and figures of the impersonal, as if prolonging in a ceaseless count, in a rapturous multiplication's sum, the recurring decimals of eternity.
Thank you. Let's pause. Sri Aurobindo continues his description of this oneness, something very difficult to really describe, but he does this. Incalculable, outflowing infinitudes. This infinitudes is a word that Sri Aurobindo himself coined, which basically means infinities, but it's much more poetic and kind of carries some other tone of quality. Laughing out an unmeasured happiness, live their innumerable unity. There is this vast diversity, infinite diversity, but yet united. And the worlds where the being is unbound and wide, bodied unthinkably, the egoless self, without thought, without ego. It embodied the self, the one being. Rapture of beatific energies. Beatific is intense, divine delight. Join time to the timeless, poles of a single joy. So we see in this unification that even time is joined with the timeless. And it's as if space, the infinity of space, is united with the smallest of beings. White vasts were seen where all is wrapped in all. There were no contraries, no sundered parts, no parts cut off or separated from the whole or from each other. All by spiritual links were joined to all and bound indissolubly to the one in a tie that cannot be broken or dissolved, all united with the one. Each was unique, but took all lives as his own. So even though each being is separate and unique, it feels all other beings as part of its being. All are united in love. Felt the divinity of its own self-bliss repeated in its numberless other selves. So let's continue. None was apart. Third line.
Where do we start there?
324, third line.
Each.
None.
None was apart. None lived for himself alone. Each lived for God in him and God in all. Each soulness inexpressibly held the whole. Their oneness was not tied to monotone. It showed 1,000 aspects of itself, its calm, immutable stability, upbore on a changeless ground, forever safe, compelled to a spontaneous servitude, the ever-changing, incalculable steps, the seeming reckless dance, subtle plan of immense world forces in their perfect play. Appearance looked back to its hidden truth, and made of difference oneness's smiling play. It made all persons fractions of the unique. Yes, yet all were beings' secret integers. All struggle was turned toward a sweet strife of love in the harmonized circle of a sure embrace. Identities reconciling happiness gave a rich security to difference. On a meeting line of hazardous extremes, the game of games was played to its breaking point, where through self-finding by divine self-loss, there leaps out unity's supreme delight, whose blissful, undivided sweetness feels a communality of the Absolute.
Thank you. Here, Sri Aurobindo explains, in a sense, or describes this relationship between the oneness underlying all things, the spirit, and these individual expressions of it, that relationship. And we can think of it also as, in terms of our own experience of our right relationship with that oneness. None was apart, none lived for himself alone. Each lived for God in him and God in all. Each soulness inexpressibly held the whole. Each individuality inexpressibly held the oneness of everything, of all beings, of the divine. Oneness was not tied to monotone. It's not that everything is the same. It showed 1,000 aspects of itself. This says 1,000, but just a numberless aspects of itself. in a calm, immutable stability. All this diversity is firmly anchored in the one. So being firmly anchored in the one, it can express itself in its individual way with freedom. Upbore on a changeless ground, forever safe. Compelled to a spontaneous servitude. I think this is key, because it's not that each individuality is serving its own interests, separate from the oneness. It's tied to that oneness. It serves that oneness. But it's a spontaneous. It doesn't feel as if it's being forced to do that. Just naturally, spontaneously, it expresses that tie to the oneness of which it is an expression. It expresses itself truly now. Itself being the one self. The seeming reckless dance's subtle plan of immense world forces in their perfect play. So all these immense world forces which seem to be clashing, interacting with each other, becomes here a perfect dance, a perfect play. Yeah, that dance, it's a spontaneous movement occurring. There's a subtle plan, but it's not, in a way, knowing. It's not kind of working out something. It just happens spontaneously, but it works out perfectly. All persons were fractions of the unique, yet all were being secret integers. Using mathematical metaphors here. But in some way, each being is a part of the one being, but yet they're not really a cut-off part. They're also an integer. They're also expressing the fullness of that being in their own way. Each is perfect expression of the one. Even though there are many perfect expressions, each is expressing that one self. All struggle turned into a sweet strife of love in the harmonized circle of a sure embrace. See again, identities reconciling happiness gave a rich security to difference. Each can express itself in its own unique way because it's safely anchored in the one. And then the game of games was played to its breaking point, where through self-finding by divine self-loss, in a sense, that's how we find that oneness, by completely losing ourselves, our separate selves, in that. And then there leaps out unity's supreme delight, whose blissful, undivided sweetness feels a communality of the Absolute. This communality suggests a feeling or spirit of cooperation among a group, a feeling of group solidarity. So we'll continue.
There was no sob of suffering anywhere. Experience ran from point to point of joy. Bliss was the pure, undying truth of things. All nature was a conscious front of God. A wisdom worked in all, self-moved, self-sure. A plenitude of illimitable light. An authenticity of intuitive truth. A glory and passion of creative force. Infallible, leaping from eternity, the moment's thought inspired the passing act. A word, a laughter sprang from silence breast. A rhythm of beauty in the calm of space. A knowledge in the fathomless heart of time. All turned to all without reserve's recoil. A single ecstasy without a break. Love was a close and thrilled identity in the throbbing heart of all that luminous life.
Thank you. And here we see that delight of existence flowing through all of this unified life. No suffering. Experience running from point to point of joy. Bliss was the pure, undying truth of things. All nature was a conscious front of God. That's like each being one face, one personality of the divine. Single wisdom worked in all, self-moved, self-sure, a plenitude of illimitable light and authenticity of intuitive truth, a glory and passion of creative force. That's what's behind each movement. And it's infallible, leaping from eternity. The moment's thought inspired the passing act. But everything arises out of that oneness, out of the silence, out of the calm of infinity. A word, a laughter sprang from silence breast, a rhythm of beauty in the calm of space, a knowledge in the fathomless heart of time. Even each moment carries within itself eternity. It's arising out of that eternity, senses that behind. And all turn to all without reserves, recoil. All could turn to each other because all were one. It sensed the one, the same being, the same self and other beings around. All are united in this fathomless love, a single ecstasy without a break. Love was a close and thrilled identity, as one is identified with the other. Very intimate, deep love. In the throbbing heart of all that luminous life. Now continue.
A universal vision that unites, a sympathy of nerve replying to nerve, hearing that listens to thought's inner sound and follows the rhythmic meanings of the heart. A touch that needs not hands to feel, to clasp, were there the native means of consciousness, and heighten the intimacy of soul with soul. A great orchestra of spiritual powers, a diapason of soul interchange, harmonized a oneness deep, immeasurable. In these new worlds projected he became a portion of the universal gaze, a stanchion of the all-inhibiting light, a ripple of a single sea of peace. His mind answered to countless communing minds. His words were syllables of the cosmos' speech, his life a field of the vast cosmic stir. He felt the footsteps of a million wills, moving in unison to a single goal. A stream ever newborn that never dies, caught in its thousandfold current's ravishing flow, with eddies of immortal sweetness thrilled. He bore, coiling through his members as they passed, calm movements of interminable delight, the bliss of a myriad myriads who are one.
Thank you. So in the first part of this, Sri Aurobindo is describing how the senses experience things in this oneness. So a universal vision that unites, a sympathy of nerve replying to nerve, hearing that listens to the thought's inner sound and follows the rhythmic meanings of the heart, a touch that needs not hands to feel, to clasp. Were there the native means of consciousness and heightened the intimacy of soul with soul. Behind our physical senses, we have these subtle senses that are more sensitive, more powerful, so that we can hear, let's say, the thoughts of others or the meanings that the words of others may be expressing, that deeper sense behind the sounds, or the deeper sense behind what we see. Its deeper significances come out. A grand orchestra of spiritual powers, a diapason of soul interchange, harmonized, a oneness, deep, immeasurable. So a diapason is a full, rich outpouring of harmonic or harmonious sound. And often it refers to the entire compass of musical notes or the entire range that an instrument can play. So that full range of being, of sense, is expressed in these soul interchanges, and they're all harmonized with the oneness. There's an amplitude, a fullness in the expression of the oneness through all the range of possibilities of sense and sound and sight. So into these new worlds created, he became a portion of the universal gaze, a station of the all-inhabiting light, a ripple on a single sea of peace. But that's for him, but I think perhaps that's for all the beings that live there in those realms. His mind answered to countless communing minds. There, I don't think thought or mind needs to express itself necessarily in ideas or thoughts or sounds or words. One knows the other, what's behind their sense, what they're communicating. His words were syllables of the cosmos speech. Sri Aurobindo sometimes refers to the highest forms of poetry as inevitable lines, he would say, that they just expressed perfectly, inevitably, this particular significance that's being expressed. His life, a field of the vast cosmic stir. He felt the footsteps of 1,000,000 wills moving in unison to a single goal. And then again, this delight flowing through all, caught in its 1,000-fold current's ravishing flow, with eddies of immortal sweetness thrilled. He bore, coiling through his members as they passed, calm movements of interminable delight, unending delight. The bliss of a myriad myriads who are one. All the infinity of beings expressing this bliss, all united in the one, like the drops of honey in Sri Aurobindo's aphorism. He bore, coiling through his members as they pass. He was bearing that. He was, it's an intense delight going through it, through him, through his body, through his nerves, this intense delight flowing through that. He could bear that. Calm movements of interminable delight. Here he's kind of juxtapositioning two things that seem contradictory on one sense, of calm but interminable delight at the same time. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah, in the 3 lines there, or 4, a stream, ever newborn, that never dies, caught in a 1,000-fold current's ravishing flow. So that delight is flowing in that stream, with eddies of immortal sweetness thrilled. Yeah, eddy is like a little circular movement in a stream, or where it's hitting the rocks and the water stops and mingles there. And if we go into nature and sit by a riverside, one of these rocky streams where we see these things, those little places where that happens, there's this wonderful sweetness and delight experienced in nature there. So he's using that as a symbol of this delight that's flowing through all these little individualities, these little experiences, encounters in the multitude of existence. Life is not this monotone. It has all these diversities of experience that we have, probably amplified many times over, but all delightful little experiences. The bliss of a myriad myriads who are one. A myriad is an uncountable sum. One more passage.
In this vast outbreak of perfection's law, imposing its fixity on the flux of things, he saw a hierarchy of lucent planes, and fastened to this highest kingdom of God's state, attuning to the truth their own right rule. Each housed the gladness of a bright degree, alone in beauty, perfect in self-kind, an image cast by one deep truth's absolute, married to an all in happy difference. Each gave its powers to help its neighbor's parts, but suffered no diminution by the gift. Profiteers of a mystic interchange, they grew by what they took and what they gave. All others they felt as their own completements. One in the might and joy of multitude. Even in the poise where oneness draws apart, to feel the rapture of its separate selves, the soul in its solitude yearned towards the all, and the many turned to look back at the one.
Thank you. Let's pause. When I spoke in the beginning about this manifestation of the supramental consciousness on earth, and I spoke of a new race of beings that would come, the supramental beings, but also then a range of other levels of consciousness that would be enlightened by the supramental consciousness, those ranges of mind between human mind and the supermind, these higher levels of spiritual consciousness. But those two, like mind, enlightened by this higher light of the supermind. So I think that he refers to these here in this vast outbreak of perfection's law, imposing its fixity on the flux of things. He saw a hierarchy of lucent planes enfeoffed to this highest kingdom of God's state. So he's seeing a hierarchy of lucent planes of consciousness, lucent, full of light, in fief to this highest kingdom of God's state. And fief is invested with possession of something. So they're invested with this spiritual light of the supermind. That also they have, and they express in their own degree, attuning to the one truth, their own right rule, each house the gladness of a bright degree. So they express a particular degree of that supramental light, not fully expressed as in the higher realm, some of it perhaps withheld within, but expressing a certain aspect of that. Alone in beauty, perfect, in self kind, an image cast by one deep truth, absolute, married to all in happy difference. So this evolution of consciousness continues on Earth. Now there's a higher peak that becomes manifest, supramental, expressing the fullness of the oneness in its multiplicity. But further down, there are other degrees of this consciousness, down to mind, into life. But all has been enlightened, not perhaps in the absolute sense of the term, but with a greater light and fullness and expression, able to express something of the divine within that particular degree of the manifestation. They're more united with one another, the beings, the states at those levels. Each gave its powers to help its neighbor's parts, but suffered no diminution by the gift. All is helping all. Each one of these beings, each one of these levels of consciousness that are embodied and expressed, are helping the others, are working with the others in a kind of orchestra of manifestation, giving to the others. They grew by what they took and what they gave. All others they felt as their own complements, one in the might and joy of multitude. And then, even in the poise where oneness draws apart to feel the rapture of its separate selves, the soul in its solitude yearned towards the all. And the many turned to look back at the one. So even at those levels where it's predominantly expressing its uniqueness, it's always sensing behind this oneness. And still an expression of that. So let's stop there for today.
शम्भवन्तु नः शमरात्रिः प्रतिधीयताम् शन्न इन्द्रागणे भवतामवोभिः शन्न इन्द्रावरुणा रातहव्या शन्न इन्द्रापूषणा वाजसातो शमिन्द्रा सोमा सुविताय शम्योः
शन्नो देवीरभिष्टय आपो भवन्तु पीते शमयोरभिश्रवन्तु नः शमयोरभिश्रवन्तु नः दौः शान्तिरन्तरिक्षं शान्तिः पृथिवी शान्तिरापः शान्तिरोषधयः शान्तिः वनस्पतयः शान्तिर्विश्वे देवाः शान्तिर्ब्रह्मा शान्तिः सर्वं शान्तिः शान्तिरेव शान्तिः सा मा शान्तिरेधि
In these new worlds projected, he became a portion of the universal gaze, a station of the all-inhabiting light, a ripple on a single sea of peace.
अहाने शम्भवन्तु नः शमरात्रिः प्रतिधीयताम् शन्न इन्द्रागणे भवतामवोभिः शन्न इन्द्रावरुणा रातहव्या शन्न इन्द्रापूषणा वाजसातो शमिन्द्रा सोमा सुविताय शम्योः
शन्नो देवीरभिष्टय आपो भवन्तु पीते शमयोरभिश्रवन्तु नः शमयोरभिश्रवन्तु नः दौः शान्तिरन्तरिक्षं शान्तिः पृथिवी शान्तिरापः शान्तिरोषधयः शान्तिः वनस्पतयः शान्तिर्विश्वे देवाः शान्तिर्ब्रह्मा शान्तिः सर्वं शान्तिः